February 9th, 2004. The temperature hovers just above freezing in the small, wooded town of Haverhill, New Hampshire. Snow drifts across Route 112, a quiet, winding highway known mostly to locals and the occasional traveler headed toward the White Mountains. At around 7:27 p.m., a black Saturn sedan slides off the road and into a snowbank. The front end crumples, the airbags deploy. The car faces the wrong direction, headlights still glowing against the trees. A school bus driver returning home spots the crash and stops to help. A young woman stands beside the car. She looks cold, shaken, but composed. The man asks if she needs him to call for help. She tells him she's already called roadside assistance. It isn't true. Within minutes, the driver leaves to phone police from his home just down the road. When officers arrive, the car is still there, but the woman is gone. No footprints in the snow. No calls from her phone. No trace of where she went. Her name is Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Her disappearance will ignite one of the most confounding missing person cases in modern American history. A mystery that draws in detectives, journalists, online investigators, and a family that refuses to give up. In the decades since that night, theories have multiplied. Abduction, runaway, accident, even conspiracy, but none have brought answers. This is the story of Maura Murray, a bright young woman with a promising future whose life veered off course on a lonely winter road and who to this day has never been found. To understand how a college student ended up in the middle of nowhere on a freezing night, we need to step back to the life she was living, the choices she was making, and the days that led her north. Because mysteries don't start at the moment someone disappears. They start long before that, in the small cracks that slowly widen, until one day, everything falls apart. This is where Maura's story begins.
Maura Murray was born on May 4, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children in a close, working-class family. Her father, Fred Murray, was a medical technician and an avid runner, proud, disciplined, protective. Her mother, Lori, worked multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. By all accounts, Maura was bright, athletic, and ambitious. She ran track in high school, graduated with honors, and earned an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point, a dream few achieve. But West Point wasn't her final path. After 2 years, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst to study nursing. Her friends say she wanted a career that helped people, something more personal, more human. On paper, she had everything going for her. A loving family, a serious boyfriend named Billy Roush, an Army lieutenant, a future in nursing. But beneath that promising exterior, Maura's life was showing cracks, small ones, but widening. In late 2003, she was caught using a stolen credit card number to order food. The charges were minor, and she faced only disciplinary consequences at UMass. But it hinted at stress. Her relationship with Billy was strained, long distance, full of tension, rumors of jealousy and mistrust. Her coursework was demanding, and friends noticed that in the months before she vanished, Maura seemed distracted, distant. Still, no one imagined anything serious. She was young. College stress, relationship stress, the kind of things people work through every day. Until the first weekend of February 2004. That weekend, Maura's father, Fred, drove to Amherst. They planned to shop for a new car since Maura's old Saturn was having problems. They spent Saturday test driving vehicles, then went out to dinner. Later that night, Maura borrowed her father's car to attend a dorm party. Around 3:30 a.m., driving back, she crashed it into a guardrail, causing nearly $10,000 in damage. Police issued a citation, but no arrest was made. Fred was upset, but mostly worried. Maura was embarrassed, shaken, and spent Sunday with him before he drove home. The next day, Monday, February 9th, she would vanish. But something happened between that Sunday morning and Monday afternoon that has never been fully explained. On Monday, Maura emailed her professors saying she'd be out of town for a week due to a death in the family. There was no death. She then packed a small amount of personal belongings, toiletries, some clothes, her textbooks, a favorite stuffed animal, and withdrew $280 from an ATM, stopped by a liquor store to buy a box of wine and some Baileys, and drove off in her aging black Saturn. Surveillance footage captured her at the ATM. She looked calm, deliberate, as if running errands. At around 4:30 p.m., she left Amherst, heading north. No one knows exactly why. Some say she wanted a break, a brief escape. Others believe she was planning something bigger, maybe even to start over. But if Maura had a plan, she never told anyone. As darkness fell and the snow began to return, she was driving deeper into the mountains of New Hampshire, alone. By 7:27 p.m., her car would be off the road, and Maura Murray would disappear.
The drive from Amherst, Massachusetts to Haverhill, New Hampshire takes roughly 2.5 hours. It's a quiet route, winding through small New England towns, tree-lined roads, and long stretches of forest. That Monday afternoon, February 9th, 2004, Maura set out alone in her black satin sedan, heading north. No one knows her exact destination, but her internet searches that morning offered clues. She had looked up directions to Burlington, Vermont. She'd also searched for rental cabins in the White Mountains. To some, it looked like she was planning a getaway, a week to clear her mind, to think, to breathe. To others, it seemed like something else, a vanishing act. At 1 p.m., Maura called a classmate to discuss returning some school equipment. She sounded calm, nothing unusual. Around 2:05 p.m., she emailed her boyfriend Billy Roush. "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking much. I'll call you later." It was the last message he would ever receive from her. By 3:30 p.m., she'd finished packing her dorm room, including several boxes which she left neatly stacked on her bed. On top of them, she placed an email printout about the 2002 disappearance of another Massachusetts woman. No one knows why. She left the campus quietly, got into her Saturn, and drove off. At 4:37 p.m., surveillance footage from an ATM shows her withdrawing $280 in cash. She's alone. She's wearing a dark jacket, her hair pulled back. She doesn't appear distressed. Moments later, she stops at a nearby liquor store and purchases about $40 worth of alcohol, a box of wine, Kahlua, Bailey's Irish Cream, and a six-pack of beer. The receipt time, 4:50 p.m. Her next movements after that are not precisely known, but based on phone records and police estimates, she began heading north through New Hampshire around dusk. Cell tower data later confirmed her phone pinged near the town of Londonderry, about 90 miles from where she'd eventually crash. At 7:27 p.m., a resident on Route 112 reported hearing a loud thump outside. When she looked out her window, she saw a car off the road, lights on, hazard flashers blinking. A few minutes later, a school bus driver named Butch Atwood stopped beside the scene. He recognized the car, a black Saturn. A young woman stood nearby. She wasn't injured, but she appeared shaken. He offered to call for help. She politely declined. She said, "I've already called AAA." But there was no cell signal in that area, and AAA never received any call from Maura. Butch drove home, parked his bus, and phoned the police. When officers arrived at the scene minutes later, the car was still there, front end damaged, airbags deployed, a red stain on the driver's door that would later be identified as wine. The driver's seatbelt was unbuckled, the keys were missing, and Maura Murray was nowhere to be found. Police found her belongings inside: her wallet, her credit cards, her cell phone, the box of wine, partially spilled, and a stuffed animal her boyfriend had given her.
Everything suggested she hadn't gone far. But in the fresh snow, there were no footprints leading away from the car. None. Within the hour, the first officer on scene, Sergeant Cecil Smith, radioed that the driver appeared to have fled the area on foot. He called in a local tow truck and filed an initial report. By the next morning, the story would begin spreading through Haverhill. A young woman's car had crashed on Route 112. She'd spoken to a witness, then she was gone. No one knew it yet, but that night marked the beginning of one of America's most perplexing missing person mysteries. The call came in to the Grafton County Sheriff's Department at 7:27 p.m. Single car accident on Route 112. No injuries reported. Driver appears to be unharmed. Within 10 minutes, Sergeant Cecil Smith of the Haverhill Police Department was dispatched to the scene. It was a clear but cold February night. Snow from earlier in the week still lined the road in thick white banks. When Smith arrived, the bus driver, Butch Atwood, was already back at his nearby home. The black Saturn sat half buried in snow, its rear tires lifted slightly off the pavement, headlights dimming. Smith called out for the driver. No response. He walked the immediate area, checked both directions of the highway, the only sounds were the hum of the cruiser engine and the wind through the trees. Inside the car, he found a few small but telling details. A box of Franzia wine had leaked across the back seat. The driver's airbag had deployed. On the dash, a rag had been stuffed into the tailpipe, something investigators later speculated might have been used to prevent smoke from drawing attention if the car was running rough. Her purse was still inside, her cell phone, her credit cards, even her class assignments. Nothing pointed to a robbery or abduction, at least not yet. At 7:46 p.m., a local fire department unit arrived. They helped secure the area and began searching both sides of the road for footprints. None were visible beyond a few impressions near the driver's door, shallow, fading into the snow. The first theory was simple. The driver had wandered off, perhaps intoxicated, perhaps to avoid a DUI charge. Officers checked nearby houses and outbuildings, calling Maura's name. Nothing. Just after 8 p.m., dispatch attempted to trace the Saturn's registration. It came back to Fred Murray, Maura's father, in Massachusetts. When they reached him later that night, Fred was confused, then alarmed. He hadn't spoken to his daughter since Sunday morning. He immediately began driving north. Meanwhile, officers towed the car to the local lot for storage. They noted a red liquid stain on the driver's side door, confirmed later as wine, and a rag inside the tailpipe. But nothing about the crash itself was catastrophic. The car could have been driven away. And yet, the driver had vanished completely. Around 8:30 p.m., a neighbor named Faith Westman told police she'd seen the crash from her window. She described a single young woman standing by the car, no one else. Moments later, another neighbor said he noticed movement near the woods, but couldn't tell if it was an animal or person. Search dogs were brought in the next morning. They caught Maura's scent, leading east along Route 112 for about 100 yards, then suddenly stopped in the middle of the road, as if the trail had vanished. To investigators, that detail would become one of the case's great puzzles. The scent ending abruptly suggested Maura might have gotten into another vehicle, but no one had reported seeing a car stop. By dawn, news of the disappearance spread through local radio and newspapers. Missing college student, car found, driver gone. Fred Murray arrived at the scene early that morning, distraught, insisting his daughter would never just run away. He believed from the beginning that she had been taken. But without clear evidence of foul play, police labeled Maura as a missing person, not an abduction victim. Within 24 hours, the quiet town of Haverhill had become the center of a growing mystery. A car crash with no driver, a trail that ended at the edge of a road, and a father demanding answers. What happened between 7:27 and 7:46 p.m.? The narrow 19-minute window between the crash and the first officer's arrival would become the most scrutinized timeline in the case. Somewhere in those missing minutes lies the truth about what happened to Maura Murray.
The morning after the crash, February 10th, dawned gray and bitterly cold. Snow dusted the banks of Route 112, where the black Saturn had been pulled from the ditch just hours before. Police tape fluttered in the wind, a fragile reminder of how quickly life can change course. Fred Murray stood near the scene, looking over the spot where his daughter's car had come to rest. She wouldn't have left this, he told reporters. Not her wallet, not her phone. She's out there somewhere. Someone took her. Local and state police began organizing a ground search that same morning. Dozens of officers, canine units, and volunteers from neighboring towns combed the area on foot, following both sides of the road for miles. Helicopters scanned from above. Dive teams swept nearby rivers. It was one of the largest search efforts New Hampshire had ever seen. But by sunset, not a single trace of Maura had been found. No footprints leading away from the crash site, no discarded clothing, no signs of a struggle. She had simply vanished. The lead investigator, Lieutenant John Scarinza of the New Hampshire State Police, said later, "It was as if she'd been picked up by a passing car or disappeared into thin air." For Fred Murray, the idea that his daughter had simply walked away made no sense. Maura was athletic, yes, but she wasn't dressed for sub-freezing temperatures, and the nearest town was miles away, with no sidewalks and little light. Investigators began canvassing the area door to door. One resident recalled seeing a red pickup truck idling near the intersection around the time of the crash. Another remembered headlights facing the wrong direction on the road. None of the sightings could be confirmed. Then came the first false lead. A ragged piece of cloth found in the woods, thought at first to be from a jacket. It wasn't. Just debris from an old tarp. By February 11th, the official search was scaled back. State police described Maura as a missing person, voluntarily missing. That phrase infuriated her family. To them, it sounded like the case was being closed before it had even begun. Fred told reporters, "She didn't run away. Somebody grabbed her." But law enforcement had their reasons. There were no signs of foul play, no clear evidence of a crime, and Maura's own recent behavior, her false email about a death in the family, her cash withdrawal, her apparent secrecy, suggested to them she might have wanted to leave on her own. Over the next several days, tips poured in from across New England. Sightings in Vermont, a possible match at a convenience store. None led anywhere. Police obtained her phone and email records hoping for a clue. They found nothing out of the ordinary. Her last known call, made just before leaving campus, was to check her voicemail. After that, silence. By the end of the week, a narrative began to form. Maybe Maura had reached a breaking point, stressed, embarrassed, emotionally exhausted. Maybe she'd gone north to escape. And maybe, somewhere along that road, she'd made a tragic decision. Fred Murray rejected that outright. "My daughter was happy. She was planning her future. Someone out there knows what happened." As the days turned into weeks, the search radius expanded. State troopers, volunteers, and private detectives scoured logging roads, rivers, and abandoned cabins. In a region so vast, with hundreds of miles of forest and countless secluded paths, it was like searching for a ghost. The only thing investigators could agree on was this: the crash on Route 112 wasn't the end of Maura's story. It was the beginning of its mystery. Because whatever happened after that crash happened fast and left nothing behind. As the official search quieted down, public curiosity was only beginning to rise. The disappearance of Maura Murray wasn't just another cold case. It had all the elements of a haunting mystery. A young, intelligent woman, a lonely road, a crash, and then nothing. The more details that emerged, the stranger it seemed. Why had Maura driven nearly 150 miles from her campus without telling anyone where she was going? Why had she lied to professors about a death in the family? And why, after a minor car accident, would she simply vanish, leaving everything behind? Online communities took notice. Within months, internet forums began to dissect every available clue. People analyzed maps, police reports, and timelines, amateur sleuths recreated the route she drove that day. Some believed Maura had planned to start a new life. Others were certain she'd been the victim of foul play. As theories multiplied, one thing became clear. Nobody could agree on what the evidence meant. The first major theory was voluntary disappearance, that Maura had run away to escape pressure. Supporters of this theory pointed to her recent behavior, the credit card incident, the lies to professors, the tension with her boyfriend. They said she'd packed carefully, bringing her textbooks, toiletries, and personal belongings, suggesting she intended to be away for more than a few hours. But if Maura planned to start over, why choose such a remote area? Why leave her ID, cards, and phone behind? And where would she go, in freezing weather, with no trace since? The second theory, and the one her family has long believed, is abduction. The key details supporting this idea came from the scent dogs. Their trail ended abruptly about 100 yards east of the crash site, in the middle of the road. That suggested she might have been picked up by a passing driver. If true, it would mean she accepted a ride, willingly or under duress, and was taken from the area quickly. But investigators could never identify any vehicle or driver linked to that night. A third theory focused on accidental death. Perhaps she wandered into the woods disoriented, or tried to find shelter, and succumbed to the cold. Search teams and cadaver dogs covered miles of wilderness, but found nothing, no footprints, clothing, or remains. Even years later, when aerial imaging and ground-penetrating radar were used, there were no results. Still, some investigators believe her body may rest somewhere in the dense New Hampshire forest, buried under years of snow and soil. Then came the more complex ideas, the ones that blurred the line between theory and obsession. Rumors of local involvement, stories of hidden evidence, conflicting witness statements. Some online researchers accused police of mishandling the case. Others suspected Maura had met someone she knew along the way, perhaps a secret relationship or online acquaintance. None of it could be proven. Over the years, new leads surfaced and faded just as quickly. In 2019, cadaver dogs alerted to a property not far from the crash site. For a moment, hope flickered that maybe, after all these years, answers were finally close. Excavations began. But after days of digging, authorities announced the area was clear. No remains, no evidence, nothing. The mystery endured. Meanwhile, online, Maura's case became something bigger, a digital phenomenon. Podcasts, documentaries, Reddit threads, all trying to solve what law enforcement could not. Her family worked tirelessly to keep her name alive. Fred Murray, her father, driving the same roads year after year, handing out flyers, pleading for information. And yet, with every year that passed, the lines between truth and theory blurred even more. Witness memories faded. Records became harder to verify. Some people built entire lives around trying to solve the puzzle of what happened on that cold February night. But for the Murray family, it was never about theories or online fame. It was about a daughter, a sister, a person, someone who vanished without explanation, leaving behind a family caught between hope and heartbreak. And still, 20 decades later, they wait for an answer.
In the 20 years since Maura Murray vanished, the world around her case has changed, but the mystery has not. The stretch of Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, remains quiet. The forest still rises thick on either side. In the winter, the same wind blows down from the mountains, whistling through bare branches, the same sound Maura might have heard before she disappeared into the night. Her family still visits that road. There's a small wooden cross by the tree line, wrapped in blue ribbons and weathered by snow. Beneath it, handwritten notes and fading photographs. It's not an official memorial, just a sign that she isn't forgotten. Over the years, there have been moments of hope, tips that seemed credible, excavations that promised closure. Each one ended the same way, with nothing found. In 2021, state police conducted new searches using advanced ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs. Again, no trace of Maura was discovered. Some believe the truth is buried deep in the White Mountains. Others believe someone, somewhere,
still holds the secret. For Fred Murray, the loss has become a lifetime mission. He has appeared on television, in podcasts, and at vigils, always repeating the same words. Somebody knows something. Maura's mother, Lori, passed away in 2009 without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. Her siblings continue the search, maintaining online pages and coordinating with volunteer investigators. Over time, the case has become more than a mystery. It's a symbol, a story that asks difficult questions about how we investigate, how we remember, and how easily a person can slip through the cracks of our attention. Every generation has its haunting cases, names that linger like unfinished sentences. In New Hampshire, that name is Maura Murray. Some believe she ran away. Others believe she was taken. Still others think she met with a tragic accident, hidden somewhere beyond the reach of searchers. The truth is, no one knows. What we do know is this. A 21-year-old nursing student left her campus one February afternoon, drove north into the mountains, and vanished within a matter of minutes, leaving behind a wrecked car, a trail of questions, and a family searching for answers that never came. Maybe someday, a hiker will find something. A piece of jewelry, a fragment of bone, a trace that finally reveals what happened on Route 112 that night. Until then, the story of Maura Murray remains suspended, not closed, not solved, just waiting for the truth to surface. This was the disappearance of Maura Murray. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, consider sharing it, because sometimes awareness is the one thing that keeps a case alive. And maybe somewhere out there, someone knows the truth. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and stay safe.